Hello and welcome to the first episode of Goon Parade. I'm Chris and I'm joined today by the number one Dixonsider shareholder, Roberto.
You're right.
And the fart connoisseur, Edmund.
Yeah, they call me Anthony Padilla.
Today we're going to be talking about the human condition, which is a fine joint. Let's jump straight into it. I last watched this about a week ago. When did you guys last watch it?
I rewatched it over the Christmas holidays, so it must have been like about 3 months now. So, yeah.
I don't actually know, but probably like 5 years ago. So I'm gonna be super. This is like, it's like what we're doing is a Terence Davies commentary on memory, and I'm gonna be like the old man that remembers things, and you're gonna say stuff, and I'll be like, oh no, I totally forgot that even happened.
Should we go through the lineage of how we all discovered this film? Because I feel like that's a pretty interesting starting point.
Yeah, kick it off.
Well, when I was a wee lad in year 7, and I was like going into school, telling everyone to go watch Iron Man 3 in theatres now. I went up to this one blonde man, and he said to me, "Have you seen The Human Condition?" And that man was the fart connoisseur himself. Being I was still interested in only watching Iron Man 3, so it took me about how many years would it be? Jesus,
like 9 years.
9 years, and then I watched this little film called Harakiri. And I kind of enjoyed Harakiri a bit, so I was like, I'll give The Human Condition a go now, because I saw it was the same director, because I sort of liked Harakiri. It wasn't a big thing.
No, it's quite shit, isn't it?
Yeah, there's these moments where I'm like, well, yeah, it's kind of a masterpiece, but it's the 4th highest rated film on Letterboxd. I'm gonna have to give it 3 stars.
Yeah, I can't be having that.
Anyway, so that's how I watched the film.
Yeah, I literally only heard of it from you two, so...
Yeah, and I originally found out the film watching a video from a YouTuber called Thomas Pollock. He did just like a really long form discussion with his friend about it. Or maybe did I watch it? I don't actually remember whether I found out the movie because of that, or I watched the movie and then watched him talk about it after. But Thomas Pollock was involved, and he's got good recommendations. So
did you buy the Blu-ray first off, or did you watch it?
Yeah, I couldn't find it. I remember not being able to find it online and then saving up for the Arrow Video one. And actually, talking about formatting, I was just looking at the pictures on DVD Beaver. What a strange site name. But in terms of like the transfer quality, I'm not sure whether Criterion have done a further remaster, but the Arrow Video remaster looks better in my opinion than the Criterion one.
Yeah,
really.
I think the Criterion's only like got a DVD of it. I don't think they've done a Blu-ray release. Maybe they have. I don't know.
There must be some restoration, because I remember seeing something on YouTube of it, and the restoration looked tenfold better than the Arrow Video one that I watched.
But I thought the Arrow Video one was a restoration of the footage.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. But I don't know. Maybe they restored it in the video itself. That like they like redid the footage.
It was a good thing that I got the Blu-ray box set when I did, because that's the one that comes with like a little strip and a booklet that I also read today, which was not that insightful about the film. They were asking the composer of the soundtrack some good questions, but rather than talking about the human condition, they talked so much about Harakiri and Kwaidan. I mean, I suppose we could talk about that later, but yeah, the box set's now hard to find, so yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about how little there is. Despite this being like a pretty popular film, there's so little about it online. I was just looking just now on the university library, and there's no books about the human condition are all about like psychology, because there's a psychologist called Masaki Kobayashi. So you can't find anything. There's like barely any YouTube videos. Obviously, Emin just brought up one, but there's barely any YouTube videos about it either, which is just strange.
Yeah, I don't know, like, usually there's loads of, like, I don't know if there's actually much writing on Masaki Kobayashi, like, himself. Like, I think the most extensive thing I've read about harakiri in, like, an academic book was, like, I read, like, a book about, like, martial arts cinema, and there was, like, a segment on harakiri, which is kind of, like, dubious to, like, put in a martial arts book anyway. But it was, like, talking about the film, like, pretty well. But yeah, I don't know if there's actually much writing on, like, him as a director.
Well, I was gonna say maybe it's because at the time he's kind of like a cult filmmaker in a way, because I don't think he's been that popular until recent times with all the new restorations and whatnot.
Yeah, because he was probably, like, heavily overshadowed by Kurosawa during, like, the period he was making films.
I was going to say it's strange because you'd think his career would encourage, like, how interesting his career is, would encourage making at least a chapter of a book about it, because I only found out today about his documentary Tokyo Trial, which looks absolutely mad, because he after doing The Human Condition, after doing that, you'd think, okay, that's it, I've done my thing that I needed to do. And then, even with all that pressure, he went on to make Harakiri, and then his first colour film in Kwaidan. So he obviously wasn't, like, deterred about, you know, falling from grace or anything. So he has a good career.
And just before the last thing I wanted to talk about before getting into the actual films, I watched like a very vague, well, I say vague interview because it was just very casual. And it was Masaki Kobayashi talking about the human condition. And despite its 9.5 hour long runtime, they were on such like high time constraints that when it came to editing it, they had to like throw away so much footage. So like, who knows how long it could have been? I think the third part. No, it was the first and second part he was talking about. He had to edit those quickly. He said he had the most like trouble shooting those two. And I also want to say, just because this interview reminded me, with the argument of whether this is one big film, 3 films, or even 6 shorter films as it's released in Japan. But yeah, Kobayashi talks about them as 3 parts, not as 3 films or 1 film,
okay.
6 films. So,
well, I guess I'll have to. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna have to leave the podcast because clearly I'm not qualified for this.
No. I was just saying.
There's no right or wrong way of watching it.
Yeah, no.
No.
I know. I was making a little joke.
Well, I'm not laughing.
Okay, well, let's start. The first film opens with Kaji, played by Tatsuya Nakadai, the absolute beast, and he's with his wife in the snow, which is a common motif as it ends in snow. And there's also another line, I can't remember if it's in the first or second film, but a character talks to Kaji and he says, "Oh, when we first met, it was in the snow," and he's talking about when Kaji first comes to the prisoner of war camp in the mines, and Kaji's like, "No, it was windy," so it's like kind of this red herring as to the weather conditions, like how that plays into the film. So yeah, we like first right off the bat, and there's a lot of motifs in this film that I'm going to talk about, and I think the next one is when they set up the prisoners of war in the camp, and they throw the dog into the electric fence.
Oh fuck, I forgot about that.
Yeah, which at first I was like, what the fuck? It's so out of nowhere.
I think there's a little goof because you can kind of see the dog like. Actually, no, I think is it just like a prop?
I'm not sure. It looked pretty real. Like the weight of the thing that they throw looks quite dog-like.
I thought like maybe there's like a little Josh where like the dog actually like moves a bit like just as it comes out of shot.
Oh really?
But obviously, I don't think the actual thing was electric.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they have people run into that thing, so
yeah.
They would have had some kind of rig that made smoke. But yeah, I want to bring that up because of the like constant reference to dying like a dog throughout the films. With that scene also being in winter, and then obviously the final scene being in winter, it just all comes into play.
The whole film, well, I mean, all of them are basically about, well, not basically, they are about horrible standards you had to uphold in imperialist Japan, which usually like involved basically being like the most masculine person of all time, especially like if you basically everyone wasn't exempt from war, and if you basically disobeyed any of the standards you were upheld to, you were pretty much on the cutting
Talking
board.
about honor, I was watching the Emperor's Naked Army marches today. Because I know I borrowed your DVD, and then I was like, I might actually have to hand these back. So, also, Exorcist, just BT dubs.
Oh yeah, I can still got it. Yeah.
Only if you want to. But essentially, talking about honor in that film that he mentions, they would talk. Some of them say we killed the men because they were deserting, and the man from the film says that's no longer a dishonorable act anymore, because, like you were saying, post-war opinions on like honor and all of that kind of stuff have changed, and that's like you couldn't get a character so like pacifist, and you know, like he doesn't want to be driven to kill someone, but as the movies go on, he's like forced into situations where he has to act against what he wants to do.
His character, like, almost like you almost have like three completely different versions of him in each film, but you can tell like it's kind of just because of all the horrors he faces, this kind of layer just kind of gets built upon this guy. But you can, I think the great thing about the performance is that you can still recognize he's like in there, even by like the third film where he's just been through so much shit that it would just change anyone, you know.
Yeah, well, he has those ponderous moments even when he is acting as more of a soldier in the third one. You can still see. I mean, this just says how like good Tatsuya Nakadai is. It's just these subtle moments of like him thinking and reconsidering such things. But I also, that's a good point about the honor, because I think what makes the first film so good for me, or the first part, is how it's all about his pride, and he actually acts quite selfishly in the first one. Really, he should be looking out for his wife, who's sacrificed like her life to come live with him in this fucking shithole. And like in the end, he's really just acting out of his own pride, and he's not working for the good of the Chinese soldiers. He's really just looking out for what he thinks is right. And just ultimately his downfall. And what I think we see in the second and third one is him losing his pride. And there's actually a moment in the second one where he finally snaps against the old veterans at the camp, and I think he even mentions something about pride. He says, "I no longer have pride" or something, as he pulls out the knife. Yeah, again, it's just each film also has like that brilliant point of no return moment.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In the first one, it's probably in that like boardroom where when he first comes to the camp, and they all kind of laugh at him at the end of the scene. It's like this horribly like foreboding moment. So, yeah, does anyone else have anything to say about the first part?
There's also like the fact that there's so many shots like outside of the prison camp and stuff. I remember, isn't there a bit where they're like, for the labor, they're like sort of stuck in a big canyon or something, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they're like pushing trains in these canyon bits, and it's like they're geographically stuck as well. You can't imagine them being able to go out. I don't really know where I'm taking the point, but like, yeah, you get that feeling that they're stuck there.
From the filmmaking, but what's so great about Kobayashi as a director is his willingness to shoot so extremely wide and then so extremely close. Which, like, when you talk about auteurs, you talk about the extreme wides and the extreme close-ups to really define them. And you get such a great sense of that in this.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a general thing over like all of his like films, to be honest. But like Kobayashi, for me, he like a lot of his shots. Like I don't want to use like the phrase that they're all like paintings or like individual paintings, but like he like you can very clearly tell he's like choreographed like a lot of even like the smallest like moves for the actors, because like even like for like close-ups you can tell how like static the actors are trying to be, just because he wants to capture like their facial expression, and it just helps so much because the whole film is like so overtly shot, and like you can just it's just so overbearing, and it really captures like the feeling of like the horror of just being in like most of these situations. But like in terms of the first part, I guess the only other thing I'd say is well, like it's interesting because like I think the first part has like the most like defined set of characters outside of Kaji, like with the prisoners.
Yeah, definitely. And with that comes like more developed character dynamics as well, which I think helps the film a lot.
Yeah,
it's probably my favorite part, is just because you understand what characters are gonna do and why they do it more than you do in the second and third part. I mean, in the second and the third part, it's not really about the surrounding cast anymore, because with each film he becomes a more stripped away character, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I guess like the thing I really like about like the whole prisoners thing is like there is like you said, he is like, because he has like this kind of pride and he has this reputation for like humanism. It's almost as though he's like there's a point where he's only upkeeping that just because has that reputation now. So when you get to the end and there are these prisoners who are about to be executed, and his morals should dictate that he should put everything on the line to save them, he doesn't, because he doesn't want to die, and that leads to like him essentially being cast out by like the Chinese in the town. Even though he kind of comes to his senses eventually, you can kind of tell he's kind of reluctant, and he's kind of just kind of putting on a bit of a facade that he's kind of just had forced upon himself.
Definitely. Well, I think that's a good word, facade, because when the main theme of the film is authority, and I really read that kind of idea of authority as more of kind of a distribution of responsibility, because especially in the first part, I know we said we're gonna move on, but the first part, Kaji has literally no authority over what happens to any of the prisoners, but he takes full responsibility for everything, like the prisoners and even kind of the people who are mistreating them. So obviously it highlights the how corrupt the system is, but it also builds that idea of like his authority being a facade, because it's merely just like him taking responsibility for other evil doings. Cool, let's go on to the second part, which opens inside the barracks, right?
Yeah.
So we go from the snowy outside to a really like claustrophobic looking scene.
Yeah, and it's like so fucking dark. First scene in the barracks, which like really helps because you're trying to like almost trying to spot Kaji in it. You're like, where is he? Because you attach yourself so much to him.
Yeah.
So when you finally see him, it's like a bit of a relief because it's just such a you're like you said, it's such an uncomfortable environment. I think it is good that like all of these films have like that Kaji is basically in every scene because you do, even when shit gets like maybe too much for you to watch it, like you do you're able to latch onto him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also, in the same way that the first shot, the first film establishes perfectly kind of the space that we're going to be spending most time in, which is like quite cold. In the second one, it kind of establishes how claustrophobic the second one is, because so much of it, I mean, there's a lot of it outside, and obviously like the final, like it was like half an hour, that last scene when they're in the battle, but so much of it is just how they can't escape their own relatives, essentially.
Yeah,
they're living with each other, and they can't escape all the abuse that's going on amongst the soldiers.
This film in particular, I guess, like emphasizes something I wanted to bring up, is that like how obviously like Harakiri is a critique of like imperialist Japan, but they use the samurai to do that, and they show how the samurai, the way of the samurai, and it's kind of the kind of that honor you have to uphold is basically impossible for any human being to do, and it is so like it's so funny watching this film and seeing like, wow, that was literally just what imperialist Japan was. They basically like ask you to throw away your humanity for a reason that was futile in the end. Which I think is like, it's interesting to see that mirrored. But yeah, obviously this film has that character who, like you said, his relatives, you know, he's like stuck like in three ways. He's got like, his wife's angry at him, his mum's angry at him, and the people the people that are the authority over him are angry at him because he is just not cut out for these standards that he should be upholding, and it's like it's very tragic.
Yeah, it's also worth bringing up the fact that, or how much this has in common with Full Metal Jacket, and especially that guy's character.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about I seem to remember a lot of like visual images from the first and third movie, but the second movie I just sort of remember a lot of them walking about and that, and then in the beginning I remember the suicide, because it's just that just sticks out so much, and it's like it's compared with the guy from Full Metal Jacket who's like a large, bald, upset dude who's so obviously like put down all the time and then he reaches his breaking point. This guy, he's sophisticated, he's got glasses, okay? He's kind of swag, and everyone's picking on him. It ain't fair, just because he's got a swag. And yeah, but it's really the same theme, so it does make you think like Kubrick must have seen it and taken inspiration.
Yeah. Well, also, I think The Human Condition is also based on a book, right? But also Kobayashi's own experiences and more. But what's so great about the suicide, the soundtrack's like this industrial thing. It's so cool. I can't remember what it is exactly. I might put it in playing right now, but it's just like this really eerie. You kind of know what's coming before we even get to the bathroom, because he's already left the room, and then we get this like really ominous soundtrack. Yeah, it's such a good scene.
And it's all like these high angle shots, which is like, again, it's really eerie because it just makes him feel like an ant, which he kind of is in this whole machine that he's been forced into.
Yeah, that's a good point. The idea of like ants.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's that iconic image of like all the soldiers like crawling up, well, not crawling up, but like going up the hill, which they use for like the Criterion box art.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing I wanted to talk about in the second part was, well, the fact that that's the last time we see his wife.
Oh, yes, I love that. I love this scene.
And the fact that that's like, it's just so, it's like their farewell is so underplayed and makes it so much worse.
Yeah.
For the rest of the film.
I love that like part where he like says to her, this is gonna make me sound like a bloody creep, but like when he tells her to like undress so that he can see her like in her entirety, because like the way the scene is like so it's almost like it becomes like almost spiritual at a point when she like is silhouetted against like the light of the window, and it's like that is the last time you see Michiko, who's like such a like nice character, especially in the first film when like every time he goes back to her and she's like just like his like complete solace in life, and that scene is so nice when they get to like just spend a bit of a moment together, but then it's just ripped away from you. Like you said, when the morning comes, he just has to go back out to like sparring.
He like dashes out of there. Yeah.
And then she's just and then you never see her again. You only see her in like situations that might not even be happening because he's like hallucinating them. And it's just
yeah. It's, again, I think that's like another turning point of the film.
Definitely. I guess like because I think the second one's generally considered the like least favorite of most people's in most people's opinions. I guess one thing I would bring up, I guess maybe the reason for that, I don't personally find it is an issue, is because there is just a lot of scenes of physical abuse towards like the recruits.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe some people feel like it, the message just is hammered in a bit too much. But personally, I really enjoy the second one. I think it's like, for me, it's so hard to pick a favorite between the three. But
yeah.
I think the second one definitely is like the most. How would I say? You're on edge, I think, because it is such a hostile environment.
Especially, what I think, why I disagree with like the idea that the second one's repetitive and how it's dealing with its message, is it does develop when Wikaji becomes a first class private or something, a PFC. That's it.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, finally, he's going to stop taking shit, and then the third film's going to be about him being like a great commander. He's going to get back to his wife because he's going to work his way up the ranks. But then it just repeats itself, and the veterans are still abusing him, and it's just like there's just this moment of dread.
Yeah, it's like the fact that he's like technically above them or in like rank, but then he just has to take this shit just to uphold his ideas. But then, like you said, there is that breaking point, and there's like a close up of him spitting out like quite an excessive amount of blood, and I always like that shot always sticks with me. Maybe just because like it's almost like a bit animated, and like you kind of see that like you kind of see similar shots in like an anime of like a guy like spitting out blood. And like that's something like weird with like watching old Japanese films. I always feel like I'm noticing like things that might like are later echoed, like
that go on to
and overtop the way. Yeah, like this is a weird one, but in Stray Dog, there's like a shot of Toshiro Mifune like standing off against a guy, and just like the way the shot's composed, and there's like a little bit of terrain between them, and like their legs like are so like excessively like they're in like this like really over the top stance. It just like kind of reminds you of like that, which I guess is just a weird thing I wanted to bring up. I think just Japanese cinema does allow for more exaggeration, which I think is like definitely a good thing.
Well, yeah, it's a melodrama.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like I've become so accustomed to melodrama that watching just like underplayed acting is so boring to me.
Yeah, I think like if this film was like trying to go for like a naturalistic approach, it definitely wouldn't be as special. I think the fact that it definitely uses melodrama to its advantage. I feel like, because like you said, it just like it is just that. It's like an attack on your senses, basically. Even when you think there's respite, there's probably some fucking colonel in the Japanese army who's just gonna beat the shit out of you.
Yeah. Okay. So the second film ends with Kaji leaving the battlefield after that half an hour long sequence, which is mind-boggling. Like, considering it's not really a high budget production, but they have like that scene's so like large in scale.
You know the shot of like him taking like the guy into like the hole, and there's a shot from inside the hole, and they're almost like looking into the camera as like the tank goes over them. I'm pretty sure like that's for real. Like they actually drove like the tank over the hole.
Yeah, that stunt's incredible.
It's so visceral, even though like it's not as violent as like some other war films. You do just feel like, especially like there's like a shot of like two of the guys in the holes like reaching over to each other, and then they get blown up, and you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah, it's just I think it's such a good idea of like framing that scene in those holes as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It reinforces that same idea from the rest of the film, that these characters are like confined, and they're supposed to play their role in this battle, and they can't leave those holes, not just because they can't get shot, because it's their role essentially. But again, another turning point in the film is when Kaji finally decides to leave the hole, because he's had enough once again. And that's what leads us into the third one, where he's a totally different character. I think he's definitely the most different in the third one than the second and first one. I think in the second and first one, he's still got that pride and humanity, but it's just he's a lot more subordinate in the second, which is what separates him from the first. Yeah, anyone want to kick us off with the thoughts on the third one?
It's my favorite part. Does it? How long does it take to get to like the Russian camp part?
I think that's the last hour of the film. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I was just checking.
If I'm gonna go against the grain here, but the third part's my least favorite.
That's fine.
Oh!
And here's why. To approach this, I don't know if it was because I watched it all in one day, and it wasn't that I felt fatigued, but I guess watching what was 5.5 hours of such like
bullshit.
impeccable cinema.
Yeah.
It's just like it gets to a point where I don't know if it wasn't just phasing me anymore, because all of the striking moments in the third one just didn't resonate with me in the same way they did in the first and second.
Oh, that's interesting, because I feel like, for me, like some of the more, I guess, how would you say, basically like the main moments, or at least the moments between like some of the striking moments in the third one, I actually think like resonate with me less than the other films. But when it hits those marks in the third one, like when he sees that woman, and for a minute he thinks it's Michiko, and they got like the actress to like come back for like just like these few like little hallucinatory bits, which I mean makes sense because it was probably shot like pretty close together. But and then like I was saying this to you the other day, Chris, the fucking spotlight scene in the Russian camp, just like anytime Masaki's like, all right, turn the lights down low, and then you just have like this shot of like Tatsuya Nakadai from like the side of his face that isn't exposed, but like you can see like the side of his face that's exposed, and it's like, oh, da, 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 da.
Well, he's eclipsed, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting you bring that up.
Yeah, obviously again. I mean, I say the striking moments weren't so striking to me, but I think one of the more standout bits for me was when they're at that village occupied by Japanese, and he's staying outside because again he's still got a little bit of pride left in him, and he's staying outside, and all the soldiers are in there with the prostitutes, and she says to him something along the lines of, it's something like, we never want to leave, or it's something about like giving up, or no, it's that we'll never return, so we're just gonna stay here, and we're gonna like use the newfound soldiers as protection after they've fallen in love with the prostitutes.
That seems incredible.
That's such a good scene.
There's like the dolly shot going through the room as like everyone else, as just like I hesitate to call it like an orgy because they're all like split up by beds, but like they're all just making love in these like horrible conditions, and it kind of, you're like, geez, that looks awful, but I mean for them it's probably like the most blissful moment of their lives at the moment.
That's another thing I was gonna bring up when you were talking about, you know, the woman he thinks he meets, and he's like at his lowest, and he hungry. I'm hungry. But there's also like, it brings into question about like what the war was like for the women, and how the like differences between lifestyles, and then those guys that like when they're sleeping with the women, it's like they get the morale plus 15 XP, but at what cost?
Yeah, there's a line I forgot to bring up from the first one, which always like sticks with me, where Kaji's like, because obviously they send prostitutes to like the prison camps, but he's like, there's like 100 men in that camp and only like 20 women. Like, how I feel like I'm being like a fucking, like, you know, he feels like he's just not doing what he should be doing, which and then it's kind of echoed again in that third film with that scene. Though in there, I think like it's kind of interesting because the women sort of have like a lot of agency in that little camp there. Like you said, they like, they kind of, they're using the men in that case, which eventually like kind of becomes the downfall when the Russians come to the camp, and Kaji doesn't want there to be like anyone caught in the crossfire, so he like surrenders.
No, you're wrong.
Am I getting it wrong?
Yeah, in that scene, Kaji's organized all the people to get into cover, and they're going to ambush these soldiers. And then it's the kind of head woman of the village comes out and tells them to stop because she doesn't want anyone to get killed in the village. So Kaji has to surrender.
Oh yeah, I think it's safe to say he probably would have. Maybe he came to his senses at that point, or maybe not. Maybe disagree.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I remember it. Yeah, she does, doesn't she?
Yeah, and I remember that's such a frustrating moment.
I know, it's so, because you're like, you feel like he's pretty close to like getting home at that point, and then he just gets brought all the way back, and it's like, oh.
And that's the thing. I have this like weird hope that he's still getting home, even when he's in the final scenes of him walking in the snow. I'm like, he has to get home. Yeah. And then he doesn't. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was like thinking to myself, wait, no, we don't know if like the Russian camp's like in the direction of his home or not. So maybe he's actually getting closer. Who knows?
Yeah, that's another point. Like the film's so huge scale, we don't really have much orientation of how far he is from home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the town that they were heading for, geographically, it's like one of them. It's like probably the most southern city in that kind of Siberian Russian area, or that side of Russia.
Yeah, I think they keep saying like throughout the film, they're like, oh, he doesn't, like some of the supporting characters keep going like, oh, he doesn't know where he's going. He's just pretending because he's trying to cling on to something. Like when they walk through like some of those fields, which I like, which is weird. It's like one of those things where like you don't know. I didn't notice it as much the first watch as I did the second watch, probably because I was like so I was so attached to him. I was like, yeah, he's gonna do it. But yeah, what do you guys think of like the kind of, because the structure of the third film is a lot different, where it is kind of like almost like a road film, where it's like, you know, they're traveling through all these different areas and they have all these different encounters. I think like it definitely like it's good. It's a good note to end on, because like it just emphasizes that like exhaustion that Edmund like kind of brought up when he talked about like the first time he watched it.
Yeah.
Like,
if my name rhymed with Sten Bablemski, I would say it's like the 9 Inch Nails album, The Downward Spiral.
Yeah. Sorry, I just got the rhyme joke.
What the fuck? I'm sorry, but it's a downward spiral. Sorry, that's such a roundabout way of saying that. But yeah, also 9 Inch Nails. Yeah, but
Trent Reznor's soundtrack.
Speaking of music, what is your guys' like favorite soundtrack between the three films? Because I think because the first one obviously has like what I guess is like the main theme, which is like the which kind of gets like brought in again like towards the end of the second and third films.
Yeah.
But I think I remember like the third one, because it has those moments of like almost surreal hallucinations and like that spotlight scene. It has like these like really oppressive pieces, which like never fail to like maybe go if that's the best way to describe it. Probably not.
absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I can only really remember the main theme and then that sound bit from the suicide in the second film. So yeah, I don't know. I can't really comment.
Fair dues.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the music cues are quite interesting. From what I remember, I know there's also some like, because they could have just done this big, grand, sweeping like soundtrack, but instead I seem to remember like short bits of focused, intense music.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
it will like bring it back to like I don't want to say reality, but do you know what I mean? Like they hold back in the right way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the willingness to also shoot very long sequences with no music at all.
Absolutely.
And even going into other scenes still with like no music.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very thoughtful of where they put the score and when.
Yeah, because sometimes it will be like a short transition, and then others it will be used just as a purely like emotional build up. Yeah, it's really good. That's one interesting thing I was reading in the Arrow booklet about what the composer wanted to do with the clips that he had of the film to like actually match it up with the characters' close-ups and everything. So that was cool. That was cool.
I'm very envious of your copy of the Arrow Blu-ray, by the way, because I have like an Arrow Academy Blu-ray of the film, but like it's like just a like normal Blu-ray box.
Oh,
and
sorry,
it came with like a bit of the paper inside of it, like a bit ripped, and I was like, it's fine.
Sorry, I'm not trying to boast. I'm just saying that the booklet does have a tiny bit of information.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because I didn't think there would be like. It's weird how we like talked about how like there's like not much reading, but there is like a dedicated interview for the composer. I'd be interested to read that. Sounds cool.
Yeah, and because he talks about, like I said, it's not really that focused on the human condition, but he does talk even about the documentary.
Nice.
Which now that's got me wanting to watch the documentary, even though it's like nowhere near in what people are telling you to watch by Kobayashi. It sounds really like it's a final statement on imperialist views and yeah.
I mean, I think the only other thing I wanted to say about the third part, and again, like another reason why I think it wasn't as resonant for me as the first two, was, and we talked about how Kaji's character changes throughout, and how we said it's kind of stripped away, and I just feel like what was working so well for me in those first two parts was how varied Kaji's character, because we saw these moments of him being prideful and then him kind of refraining from that sometimes, and it being a balance of that. And then this third one, I just felt his character was a little bit more one note. I don't know what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just feel like the desperation in the third movie is just like so extreme that, like, I think it's only natural for people to want to like the final film in a The Godfather just popped into my head. But I finished the Apu trilogy recently, and like, because the third movie is like the culmination of the parts, you've sat through the development of this character, because they both follow, you know, one person's struggle, and it's like, of course, the third movie you're going to be like, yeah, my boy's finally done it, or no, this guy I've been with, we've been through a journey and now it's ending. I think it's only natural for someone to like the last movie, even if it's rubbish, and I'm fine liking a rubbish movie.
I just had a thought that kind of popped into my head. Like, obviously in this film, Kaji like definitely is a lot more commanding, and like he has like those when he's like held up against like the Russian guys, he does like just full on tear into them. But that scene again, so frustrating, because he might have got through to them, but then the guy translating, I can't remember like for whatever reason, but he just kind of he keeps mistranslating what Kaji's saying, and I guess that's a statement about like kind of the barriers between people and just not being able to like resolve something, and that's kind of just that's the reason he dies in the end, pretty much, because he might have been able to get through to them and then maybe help the conditions in the camp, but he doesn't, and he ends up escaping after brutally murdering someone, which is like,
yeah, well, that's a great moment because that character fucking sucked.
yeah, no, it's like, the thing is like, it's almost, yeah, you hate that guy, but also you almost feel like that's kind of what sealed his doom in the end, because
his undoing,
he just kind of went against his entire like ideals and got revenge for revenge's sake, which is like always like, it's always like bitter. Well, I don't think Masaki Kobayashi wants you to be like, yeah, fuck that guy, but also you can't help but feel a bit of catharsis when he gets kicked into the poo-poo.
Yeah, I think another reason that kind of when he's talking to the Russian commanders, what makes that even more excruciating is the fact that Kaji actually is a communist. And there's like, I mean, obviously there's constant reference to it. They keep calling him a red. Yeah, and you think about those other Japanese soldiers who got put in kind of leadership roles. I mean, the guy he kills, and how they literally just got their positions because they approached them as communists.
Yeah,
and just became this. Yeah, it's just so much more excruciating because you're given you get shown what it was Kaji could have obtained, but yeah, it's just snatched away from him.
It's almost like if he had his persona in the third film, in the first film, he would have been like able to do so much more. But his persona, and even then his persona in the third film is not enough for like the situation he's in there. So it's all just like, you wish every time you watch the films. It's like one of those things where every time you watch the film, you hope that the bad situation can be avoided, but you can't, because it's all predetermined.
Because it's been shot.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up. I mean, I don't think any of us really know much about this, but the fact that Kobayashi himself was a prisoner of war. How fucking nuts that is.
A lot of directors, like in the 60s, seem to have like been involved in the war. Like Seijin Suzuki, just like, and Jean-Pierre Melville as well. Like Army of Shadows is like supposedly based off like when he was like a resistance fighter in like Nazi occupied France, which is like it's always so weird seeing that. It's like you think like shit, they're pretty much making this like it's like a very honorable way of like expressing yourself. And you're like, well shit, I'm going to make a film about when I had to when I was punched once in sixth form.
In year 2. Fucking
just,
Kevin.
But yeah,
Kevin
I guess
11.
that's, like, yeah. But that's the reason you remember these films, I guess, is because they're very earnest.
And it's like the director of Come and See said he had to make the film.
Yeah.
It had to be made because of the injustices, done to like Belarusia. But Kobayashi had to tell him.
Yeah. And I think
and then he told them, and then they were like, "Okay, we're going to war again." What's this? The Pacific War? Okay.
Yeah. I think we were talking about how we thought Kaji was still gonna make it out even when he's walking through the snow half dead. And I think the fact that Kobayashi and this is based on Kobayashi's own experiences, and he made it out of that scenario. Maybe not that exact scenario of fucking walking through the snow.
Wait, seriously?
No. I said not that scenario.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
But I think the fact that Kobayashi did live to tell the tale, you have this hope that Kaji will go back to his wife.
But that would be forgetting the most important rule of cinema, is that Tatsuya Nakadai must die in every film he's in.
Yeah, the Wicked City, the Wicked City, the Wicked City.
Let's just. I'm just gonna put this out there because I feel like this needs to be stated right now. First episode of the podcast, might as well. Tatsuya Nakadai is my favorite actor. He's a bloody.
You have dreams of him.
I have. I literally
you dream about him fucking weekly.
I don't dream about him weekly. I had a dream that he turned into a god once, which might say something. But no, he is just he is just able to like inhibit like so many like different personalities with just like his face alone. His face alone tells like a whole story, especially in like Harakiri and this film. Though I guess in this film you're watching that story play out, so it's even more like you empathize with him a lot more, just because you know the shit he's been through.
Yeah. Well, if you love him so much, why don't you marry him?
Listen, he's still alive. I can go find him.
he's a dilf.
He's still alive. That's the only condition.
He's a Jilf granddad.
Oh, that's another Roberto characteristic. Mr. Jilf lover.
All right,
Mother lover, if you will.
The Jilf hunter.
Jilf hunter.
All right, best girl in the human condition. If you don't say Michiko, I'm sorry, I'm banning you from the subreddit.
Get out of the Discord.
Yeah, I don't know.
I actually really like that. I remember there's that nurse character in the second film.
Yeah, the nurse is really good.
You wish Kaji like you wish it wasn't Kaji who had like the romantic connection with her, because obviously like he can't betray Michiko.
Michiko too fine.
Yeah, I really like that. I was like, I didn't notice this as much like the first watch, but the second watch I like really liked that hospital sequence.
Yeah, I like it. Well, it sets up Tangi as well. Tangi's a good character.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like it's like a brief respite.
Yeah,
and I like when films like kind of have like a structure, like a very clear structure of like kind of like on like I don't know how to explain it. But I think it's cool when a film can like pace itself like in a very structured way, you know. Maybe I'm talking bullshit, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it has to, because it's a 9.5 hour long thing, so it has to have some kind of structure. But maybe when I came into watching it, I think it's just like the idea of really long films being less narrative and more just like showing imagery. Which I had the same experience with Saint Tango. I expected it to be a whole lot less narrative than it actually was. But yeah, it's so baffling how much it never lets down the films.
Yeah.
It's just there's no like kind of, it's not slow in any way. It's just 9 hours of pure like storytelling.
Yeah. Like, yeah, and like the fact that like all the filmmaking is like it's not even just like observatory, it's like constantly like putting you in the action with like the constant like dolly shots and the constant like close-ups. And like I said, like Masaki Kobayashi has such a like striking visual style. With like the lighting and like the contrast. And just like how much it's almost like when he has those close-ups of people, it's like almost like the camera's like piercing the image into like existence, you know. It's like so laser focused. Don't know how to describe it. But yeah, he just know what he's doing.
Brilliant. So is this a 10 out of 10 would watch again?
This is a 10 out of 10 for me, boys.
Yeah, I think I need to re-watch it, at least the third part.
I think I'm gonna do like because I watched it again. I watched it the first time like last year, obviously. Then I watched it again this year. I think I might keep that up. I think like it just reminds me. It just like I think it's like it's good to like, just watch 9 hours of like an incredibly well-made film, just to like remind you like what you gotta be doing, you know.
Yeah, well, it did kick off my obsession with long films. Because now I'm just going to be going through stuff like 3 to 4 hours. Just because, I don't know. I mean, it's because I have so much time on my... Yeah, ooh. No, I just because I got so much time on my hands. It's the Easter break, so...
Yes, sir. Are we going to sign off? The bum boys,
no.
the bum chums.
I don't want to sign off just yet. I want to bring up a few goofs.
Some IMDb goofs.
No, my own personal notes of goofs. The first one is that there's an extreme close up of Kaji in the first film, and it's like at a canted angle, and it's like the close ups of him like twitching his eye like really excessively like during like the execution scene, and even though like it's kind of like a bit silly, it's a bit of a silly shot, but also like it like works so well in that scene because it's just like that whole scene's like supposed to be kind of like deranged. So I really like that. And then also these goofs all just kind of have to do with Tatsuya Nakadai's face, to be honest. Because in the second film,
obsessed with it.
In the second film, when Tengu's introduced and he's like saying like he's like being all rebellious to like one of the nurses, and the nurse walks away and he turns over to see Tatsuya Nakadai. Tatsuya Nakadai has like the most childish smile on his face.
Yeah.
He's like finally found someone who he can work with. And it's just kind of like a funny shot because he do just be grinning like he's seen like a pack of Haribos. And then I think that about does it for me.
Yeah, well, excellent stuff, guys. Join us next time when we talk about Goon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Are we actually watching Goon next week?